I hate how people are just now like, I don't even think the hypocrisy angle is really like the tackleable angle, even though it obviously is. I just feel like it's so weird to now have an issue or take problem with Kendrick collabing with Playboy Cardi when he's already collabed with Kodak Black. Like, I feel like if you didn't have this criticism for Kendrick back in 2022, when most people should have looked at him away for collaborating with somebody who was admittedly a convicted rapist at that point. And I understand that people are gonna sit here and tell me, yo, it was for the point of an album. I'm not gonna lie, bro. Fuck you and that album and Kendrick for doing that. I don't give a shit what moral compass you're angling this from. I don't care what hypothetical or what like conceptual point you're trying to make. What you allowed as a consequence to Kodak Black doing whatever he did, your biggest consequence that you offered Kodak Black was a paid feature on your record to say, you know what, guys? I could have been this guy. I'm closer to this guy than you think. And you know what? All the trauma that I talk about, he's a victim to it. I'm also about to pay him for his feature, even though he hasn't been remorseful or sorrowful or changing the ways that he's been moving in any stretch of the word. I'm gonna give him a spot and a placement on my record just because I need him for the sake of what I'm trying to prove on this album. That's it. Now, Kendrick Lamar is collaborating with a Playboy Cardi that is an alleged woman beater. And this is where niggas is drawing the line. I'm so lost. I'm confused. I'm genuinely confused. Now, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with niggas taking a problem with that. I just feel like y'all mad late. The new era and the new narrative and the new angle is Kendrick Lamar is collaborating with Playboy Cardi, and people have an issue with the fact that, you know what I'm saying, Cardi got allegations. But that's not the only problem. It sparks hypocrisy and anger because what have you been talking about when it comes to Drake?
There are two angles that I've heard pretty consistently as it pertains to this Kendrick Lamar as a hypocrite narrative. And the first one, and one of the most annoying, is it's battle rap, and Kendrick is supposed to make Drake look bad. So by default, that I guess somehow means that Kendrick doesn't actually believe the things that he said about Drake. If you were to take those criticisms outside of the context of a rap battle, the issue I have with this perspective is Kendrick Lamar has historically been rapping about and talking about the damage that institutions that Drake and people like him benefit from and the harm that they've done specifically to people that look like he and I and you potentially. How people like him and people around him, women and children specifically, have been victimized due to behavioral issues that stem from systemic racism and the like. And when he highlighted the issues that he had with Drake, a lot of those core criticisms fell in line with stuff that he's been talking about and been having an issue with in his music for the last damn near 2 decades. Am I to believe that he somehow manufactured a new moral compass to be applicable to Drake, and because a rap battle ensued that he doesn't somehow have a very strong moral composition when it comes to those same issues that he criticizes Drake for? Who cares if it's a rap battle? Those are Kendrick's morals. That's what he talks about. That's what he believes in. I don't know why we have to pretend that we live in a world where someone says that they believe in a thing and then you see them hanging with someone who is kind of a bit of a representation of the thing that they say that they don't like. And then people say, well, didn't you just say you didn't like that thing? And then their fans come to you and say, well, he's only human, every time he does something that's hypocritical or contradictory to the things that he says in his music. And I don't need Kendrick Lamar to be a savior before you say it. Jesus Christ. I recognize how few world leaders you feel represented by and how few entertainers you feel are doing a good enough job of talking about the injustices and the issues that you may suffer that Kendrick Lamar has been successful in at least shining a light on. So some of you may not want to look at him as objectively as some others and be like, damn, he kind of made a mistake, or this is a bit of a moral inconsistency. I realize the world we live in can be kind of disappointing. So it's like if one of my idols doesn't do everything the way that I think they should do, or are consistent in every facet of their life, I don't have to hyper focus on it and make them out to be the worst person humanly imaginable. That's not what's happening here. Which leads to the second angle, where people are saying because of his stance against Drake, Kendrick shouldn't be associating with or collaborating with people like Playboi Carti, someone who's got domestic abuse allegations and also is a perpetrator of the absent father stereotype. I get that Kendrick Lamar probably sees a lot more of himself in people like a Kodak and people like a Carti and people like an XXXTentacion, which is why he co-signed him almost a decade ago. I get that he's probably a fan of some of their music. He plays it often, most likely. He's not above these guys, despite how much outsiders give his music respect, because it acts a lot of the time as opposition to the music that guys exactly like Carti and Kodak have made. I'm not going to pretend like at least a portion of Kendrick Lamar's audience isn't made up of people who don't respect hip hop, that don't respect the perspectives that aren't presented as articulate and as well packaged as Kendrick Lamar has presented his ideas musically over the last decade. I'm not going to pretend like there aren't a group of people like that within his audience, a group of people that Kendrick Lamar has actively tried to distance himself from because he recognizes how judgmental they've historically been and how much they don't truly understand the people that make the music that they either do or don't respect. So my issue isn't necessarily Kendrick Lamar having association with any of these people. My issue isn't Kendrick Lamar having empathy or sympathy or praying for any of these people that audience may see him have association with in side eye. Kendrick offering his empathy isn't an issue at all. Kendrick offering his platform, on the other hand, to me, is. Kendrick Lamar walks this very, very protected line where he gets to call himself hypocritical and criticize himself for doing things that he sees himself do in a hypocritical nature or fashion. So his audience, a lot of the time by default, give him the same excuse when he does something that he doesn't or may not see that is hypocritical, or he does something or may not see as a mistake. And they'll apply that ideology that Kendrick may have referenced in his own music to himself to anything that he does, defaulting him to a self-admitted hypocrisy angle where no matter what, he cannot be criticized because he's already beaten you to the punch. Then I'm sure there's this fantasy that people are creating in their minds where Kendrick Lamar is behind the scenes reforming every artist that he collaborates with, but I really want you to dismiss that idea or picture from your mind because you're creating a very dangerous reality where Kendrick Lamar is, I guess, playing Jesus in the background to these guys, and any progress that they have in the positive direction you're going to attribute to Kendrick Lamar, but any negative pitfall that they might stumble under, you might say, oh yeah, well, Kendrick Lamar and him probably just did a feature. He probably wasn't even around him like that. Keep it simple. Just accept the collaboration and nothing deeper happened. Wasn't one of Kendrick's core critiques against Drake those predators move in flocks, emphasizing how your association with these people would liken you to them or make you more susceptible to the things that they do behind closed doors as well? But now the application of that logic doesn't apply to Kendrick Lamar in any capacity. In any association he has with an abuser, his fans are automatically assuming it's some recreational growth program that he's conducting for every person that's troubled. It doesn't make any sense. I'm not someone who believes that Kendrick has a higher responsibility to Playboi Carti's actions than Playboi Carti himself, because I do know there's a theory that people think that people are taking a bigger issue with Kendrick Lamar associating with Carti than people are taking an issue with Carti for actually doing the thing that they have an issue with Kendrick Lamar associating with him for. It only further reinforces the point that most people are regular and are willing to accept imperfect, flawed, and problematic individuals. The people listening to the Playboi Carti album are not the same people going on their very large public platform talking about how much they despise victimizing women or abusing innocent people. Most of those people aren't the same person. And when people highlight Kendrick's very loud exclamation and then recognize his association to people similar to those that he's admittedly despised, it just shouldn't be like the end of the world.
You on the record going back and forth ad-libbing, standing behind a nigga making a troll face and shit like that. You fuck with bro heavy. This your mans. Now, they might not have got your mans on sex assault charges, but they got him on charges. The exact type, I don't know, but they got him on charges. You know when, whenever Chloe or one of these smaller artists like Leon Thomas or Thompson or whatever his name is, you know, they get collaborations with Chris Brown, for example, and then you see their fan base fall apart because, oh my God, you're collaborating with an abuser. If you're an R&B artist, I feel like Kendrick. If you're an R&B artist, I feel like Chris Brown is one of those artists that you might not be able to avoid if you want to continue pushing through the success ladder. I'm not saying that you shouldn't stand on your business and stand on your morals and not collaborate if it means that much to you. But if you end up collaborating, I don't look at you the same way, because your power in the industry is nowhere near as solidified as, let's say, a guy as big as Kendrick Lamar that does not need to go through the hoops and the hurdles of having to deal with people that you might find reprehensible behavior-wise outside the music to have a success story. Those guys like a Leon Thomas, I understand that you've been in the background and you need to up your career a little bit, or you want to get back into the spotlight, or a Chloe and she might collaborate with a Chris Brown and be like, oh yeah, I might have to take the flack from the fans. It is what it is. But a Kendrick Lamar does not need a Playboy Cardi cosign. A Kendrick Lamar don't need anybody cosign. He's willingly participating with these people that he just did a whole press run talking about is the reason he don't fuck with Drake. A part of it. And I'm not saying Drake not a weirdo. I'm not saying that. I'm not. But at the end of the day, factually speaking here, Drake is the only one out of the most recent people that people have issue with Kendrick Lamar collaborating with that doesn't have rape charges, that doesn't have woman abuse charges. And he also is the same deadbeat that Cardi is. You made an entire record talking about you don't know nothing about that. Talking about how much better off Adonis would be if he had you as a mentor than being raised as a son by Drake. What are you gonna tell Onyx? But a lot of the bullshit that you was talking about when it came to Drake is shit that either you don't really have that deep of an issue with to stand on outside of the records that you be making with other niggas. I'm not gonna say he's lying. I'm not gonna say he don't really have a problem with those things, but clearly a lot of shit be for show. Is all I'm saying. You're right, but it's a rap battle. Gotta pick your angles. I get what you're saying, and I fuck with you for saying that. But my retort to that is, when you build so much of what you hate about this person off the back of those things, niggas are gonna look at you even harder to stand on business when it comes to those things. I can see if you mention them briefly and say, you know what, yeah, I don't like these things about you, blase, split, move on. You really leaned into those things that you find reprehensible and deplorable and terrible about Drake, and said that I could never fuck with you because of these things, and then you're openly co-signing and collaborating with artists that are doing things that at least have the paperwork to prove that they're worse. And maybe he could have, skated by off people not saying nothing about it if he didn't immediately after the fact collaborate with somebody like a Cardi. Maybe you wait a little while to do some shit like that. I don't know. I don't agree that Cardi and Drake are in the same vein, and technically you could say the same about most rappers, even Cole. Do you think that I couldn't say that that's applicable to a lot of people? That a lot of niggas just talk shit and they don't mean what they say? I'm not saying Kendrick is the only one, but he's a very public example that seems to be, I know that's not a word, but like uncriticizable. Cardi's just been, and again, this is why I say Cardi's marketing is so beautiful, because niggas were done with him because he wasn't making album dates, as opposed to the shit that he really should be like quote unquote canceled over. His marketing is great. It's fantastic. And he doesn't speak. He's not a lyricist. He's not as vocal about his issues and about his life nearly as much as a Drake is. People got an opportunity to be annoyed with Drake. Drake's way more visible. He drops way more than any of these other niggas. Obviously. Exactly. He's Playboy Cardi got the allure. He got the mystique of all. And maybe you don't have to stand on that because you never publicly came out and said anything. I don't expect you to. But the guy who does come out and say something and so strongly has to kind of be held accountable for some shit like that. I'm sorry, you do. So Kendrick is a hypocrite? No. It's bigger than that. It's bigger than being a hypocrite. I don't want to say it's grifting. Grifting, I feel like, is a little bit too nefarious or nefarious, whatever the word is. I will say he's full of shit. I'll say that. I think to say hypocrite is a little too nice. Performative, performative is a good word. Convenient morals, say something like that. Double standard. Oh, but he already said this in his music, so yeah, you definitely can't say it now. Like, bro, what are you saying? I don't even think that's a higher degree situation. This is shit that you've been talking about musically for a very long time. This is the same level. When you got a real world example of it in your face, you basically do nothing and say, yeah, no, I'm cool with it. Like, what are you talking about?